we have a next speaker is Amy Cosper. Can you hear me? Where is Amy?
Hello.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in the coolest coffee shop in Colorado, but the internet is complete crap. So we're just gonna kind of make it up. I'm gonna try to, I'll try to stay on video, you guys, but I don't know if it's gonna be possible. So give me the sign, like a signal, if the internet starts getting funky. But good morning, everybody from beautiful Colorado. I'm gonna turn that off. My name is Amy Cosper, and I am a writer and storyteller covering the entrepreneurial and creative industries based in Colorado. I think I've said that before, and it is a fantastic day here, blue skies. And I thought what we could do today, I have a presentation, but since we are sitting at sort of an intersection in the history of our culture globally, business, startups, and really we're in the middle of a transformation as entrepreneurs and creators coming out of this pandemic. And so before I jump into my presentation, which is about taking your story and taking moments that are defining them and letting them transform you as a business person, as a human, and as a storyteller. Before I jump into that, let's do this. This is your assignment. Okay, I'm gonna try to go on video because, you know, I don't think it's fair that I get to see you and you can't see my beautiful coffee shop here. So what I want you guys to do before I start is write down what you as a person stand for and what you stood for before the pandemic, right? All the things that, and do it in 3 sentences, right? This is not an essay form. Write it down, what you stood for before the pandemic. And then at the end of this presentation, which is super brief, storytelling kind of thing, it should be fun, maybe not as fun as Nicolette's, but we're gonna rock and roll. At the end of it, I also want you to write down what you stand for after the pandemic, how that has changed you and how it has made you a different, transformed business person, entrepreneur, student, creator, any of those things. All right, so that is part of the assignment. The other part of the assignment is I want you to be able to tell me in 3 sentences or less, right, what your idea, what your startup, what your endeavor is, what it stands for, right? Outside of the pandemic, I want us to be able to really come out of this presentation with a lot of clarity. And that will help with everything because that's what storytelling is. Storytelling is the key to writing or pitching or raising capital or getting intellectual property or winning a court case. It is a very simple but complex concept, and that is clarity, right? The clarity of your vision, the clarity of your ideas, your ability to communicate what you want, what you are, and what you stand for is what this is all about. So I'm gonna jump into this presentation and because technology, it wouldn't be a presentation if there wasn't some sort of hiccup. And my security settings are completely jacked up this morning. So we're just gonna make it up. We're entrepreneurs, that's what we do. We're at the Howling Cow, what could possibly go wrong? So again, this presentation is about storytelling and embracing change that transform you, but not define you. So let's just jump right on in here. And I'm gonna start with, can you guys see that? Is my screen sharing? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, outstanding. So I am starting, everything is goofy, whatever, we're just gonna do it like this. So I'm starting with a very personal story, and it is a story that for a hot few weeks defined me, right? It defined who I was, it defined what I stood for, but eventually over time, it started to transform me, not define me. And that's what I think we all need to do with the pandemic, is really use it as a transformative event in our lives as entrepreneurs. So this is the first time I've ever done it this way, and I'm going to lean on you guys so that I can get through this, because it is a very deeply personal story. And it's the first time I've used pictures. So that picture that you see to the right, the man and woman in cowboy hats with gloves standing in front of a torched, burned up pile of rubble, that is me and my husband after our home and everything we owned burned down in a wildfire. And I get a little choked up. I'm sorry, it's the picture. And those clothes that we were wearing at that moment were literally the only clothes we had to our name. We lost everything: our house, our cars, our motorcycles, everything. And at the time the wildfire, and we were not alone, there were 300 other people who also lost everything. And when the fire broke out, we were on our motorcycles in Santa Fe, New Mexico, looking at art. So we got a reverse 911 call into our Bluetooth headsets and our helmets that said, "This is the Larimer County Sheriff's Department. There is a fast-moving wildfire coming toward your house. You need to evacuate immediately." Well, we were 9 hours away, so there was no way we could evacuate. We had horses and livestock. How are we going to get them out? Luckily, the Sheriff's Department, and I am not kidding when I tell you this, they have what is called the Sheriff's Posse, right? It sounds very John Wayne, but the posse was able to get our horses out. Everything else burned. And we weren't able to get up to our house for 3 weeks because everything was hot and smoldering. Daniela, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure that, okay,
Yeah,
thumbs
yeah,
up.
we can hear you. Yeah.
We weren't able to get back up to that smoldering heap of our house for 3 weeks. And when we did get up there, there was the Red Cross, right? And they were handing out masks. See the mask hanging around my neck, gloves, because it's very toxic to go through the debris. And the goal of this is to dig through and sift through the debris of your home looking for things, right? And for a period of time, my husband and I were up there in that burning hole, digging, getting stuff all over our face, just digging for things that we were never going to find. There was nothing left after the fire. So we had a choice. We could either sit there and dig for eternity, or we could make a choice and move on. And, you know, we decided to rebuild, but it's the same with this pandemic. You can keep digging around, looking for things that you're not going to find. We are forever transformed as a globe, as a world, because of this pandemic. But my advice is, because I've lived it, is don't dig around in the rubble of what was before, right? Use it as a transformative experience. Make it a part of your narrative, but don't make it your narrative. And so the next slide here, after we got up and we decided not to dig around anymore, there was, and this is the first time I've showed this picture, this is an actual picture. Inside my house, I had a stone Buddha that I had gotten in Jakarta. And it was the only thing that was standing after the fire. And it gave me hope. It gave me the one, and that was the moment that I saw the, and eventually you got, I mean, not to romanticize this too much, his head fell off, his arms fell off, he succumbed to the fire. But at that moment, when I saw it, it gave me hope. And that hope brought me through that transformation. I did not let that fire define me. I could have, but I decided not to. I decided to make it a part of my narrative and bring it to life so that we can all learn from these catastrophic events that we're going through right now as a global community. Okay, so let's get into the storytelling, right? That was my story. That is a story that will be a part of me for the rest of my life. And your storytelling as startups, like we were saying earlier, it is everything. Your ability to communicate your story and everything that you are as a human is everything. It is the difference between getting funding. It is the difference between getting successful crowdfunding and not getting crowdfunding, finding backers, getting IP, knowing what your marketing and branding are. It is all your story. And no matter what I do in my life, that fire is always going to be a part of my story. just like this pandemic is always going to be a part of all of our stories. And so instead of talking about how much it sucks, let's talk about how much better we are as a community. And look at us. We're still standing. We have leaned in on technology. We've figured that the number of startups in Silicon Valley has gone up. The global engagement on the creative industries has also gone up. The way people create has changed. So our story is not one of despair. It is one of hope. It is one of transformation. And it is something that will be a part of you for the rest of your life. You will tell your grandchildren about this. And so storytelling is powerful, and I love it, and I'm biased. I am a storyteller. And so I thought we could now transition into, why your story is the foundation of everything, like we've been talking about. And you can write this down or not. This is not like a top secret government document. You are certainly welcome to have any of these slides that you want, or the whole thing. So here's why your story matters. And here's why the clarity of your story matters. Fundraising, right? The worst pitches I have seen as an angel investor, the worst pitches I have seen are the ones that are too complicated, right? And a lot of times that's technology stories. I make gigapoops that run this thing, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to transform the thing, and we're going to go up. No, I'm going to launch rockets, and we're going to go, and we're going to take people up in commercial, for commercial space tourism, right? That's pretty simple. That's Elon Musk. Pitching, you better have your story straight when you're pitching, because I, as an angel, can smell bullshit a mile away, right? So get your story straight and make sure that you are a part of that story, right? You as the founder, you are the one that investors are investing in, not so much the ideas. So make sure you are telling your story correctly. And CBC, Creative Business Network, is really great because they put you through boot camps that helps you refine and tell your story with great clarity. IP, we talked about that. If you can't tell your story, you're not going to get IP. Recruiting, if you don't know what your story is, you're not going to be able to hire. Technology, if you don't know what your story is, you're not going to know what technology you need to enable your business and your community of users and audience and customers. Culture, right? Your story becomes your culture. Look at Apple, look at Amazon, look at Uber, look at cultures that have failed, which we will get into it. If you don't have a good story, your culture
I'm not listening anymore.
Yeah, 1 second.
Lost her.
Our culture. Let's remember this.
Yeah, we lost her. Just giving 1 minute. She's trying to connect again. Amy, you hear?
Hello.
Hey, we lost you.
I don't know if that was Zoom or if it was the internet or a combination, but you know what? We're just going to keep powering through here. I'm sorry about that, you guys. Daniela, just give me a signal if this is not going to work.
Yeah,
okay.
I can share the presentation for you if you want.
Sure, that's fine. Or we can just talk through it, and I'm just going to keep going, you guys. I really do apologize for that. So we were talking about culture creation and audience and customer acquisition, which is what we've been through. You cannot acquire customers, audience, tribe, community if you don't know what your story is. Same with marketing and same with pivots. And we're entrepreneurs, so we understand what a pivot is. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which is what makes a great story, right? Okay, cool, Cosper, that these are the things that you can do if you have a good story. What makes a great story? Authenticity is the number one thing. Your ability to be raw, your ability to be real, your ability to feel is your authenticity. your voice. Okay, I'm a writer. So voice is, you know, I talk about it all the time, but what is voice? You know, there's confusion out there. Voice does not mean you're in a pitch competition and you start yelling, right? Voice does not mean you are loud, you are obnoxious. It simply means you have confidence, right? Voice comes directly from your confidence in your idea, in your story, in who you are, and in your purpose, which is the next bullet point. So voice is really important. And, you know, if any of you out there want to, you know, give me an email or call me or anything that doesn't require the internet, obviously, please feel free to do that. And we can work on finding your voice. Can you still hear me, Daniela? Okay. Okay. Authority, right? Authority is something that's going to come from all of those things. So for example, we work with in CBC, and actually even at where I work at Startup Istanbul, we work with a lot of startups who are in music, for example, a lot of music that is enabled by technology. So it's a lot of that back end stuff. And, you know, it's easy to say, I love music, you know, the reason I'm doing this is because I love you. No, it's not because you love something. It's because you know it, right? You have the authority. You're an expert on
Sorry, Amy, we're kind of losing you.
music. You're an expert on what you're doing, right? Be an expert on your startup, your idea, and your business. Okay, all right. Can you?
Yeah, now I think we can.
Will be better if everybody will switch off video, because this is more traffic, and maybe that's why I mean, maybe have a bad connection too.
Yeah, there is no video.
Hang on, I'm going to try to reconnect here because this is really irritating. And yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
we can hear you.
okay. All right, you guys. So let's blast through this. All right. I'm still trying to connect through Zoom, but whatever. So those are the elements you need to make a great story, great storytelling. Okay, so we're going to shift right on down here. And these are some stories that I curated for you guys. So that's the next slide, Daniela. These are some of my favorite stories of all time, right? And they're great storytellers, great stories. 2 out of the 3 are from Creative Business Cup. And I'm going to start with, you know, most of these people, actually all of them, have these great stories coming from challenging moments of transformation. And the first guy in the left-hand slide, his name is Lasse Anderson. And maybe a lot of you have heard of him. He launched a company called Grod. And you can ask Rasmus, to this day, one of my favorite startup stories of all time is Grod. His mother died and left him with a large amount of money that he was to spend on his education. He went off to school and decided that it really, you know, what he really wanted to do was something that democratized porridge, right? Grod in Danish. And he did. He started with a small storefront in Copenhagen. He has now expanded. And I'm going to try to join from my browser here, you guys. And now he's very successful, planning on opening a Grod, a porridge place in New York City. The second woman from death metal, her name is Jenny. She's from Finland, and I cannot pronounce her last name. She's a rock and roller, as you can tell from her picture. She's absolutely gorgeous. Her life was spent doing makeup, art, fashion for big named rock stars like Bono. You name it, she had done the hair, makeup, fashion stylings of these rock stars. And she loved the music. That was her favorite part. One of the reasons why she did it was for the music. She went deaf. She lost her hearing. And in order to kind of continue living the lifestyle she lived, she was going to have to wear a hearing aid, big, clunky, ugly hearing aid. And she was not keen on that. So she took that problem and solved it by turning her hearing aid into a fashion statement. That little thing dangling off of her ear is a hearing aid. She turned it into a piece of fashion. And she launched her company called Deaf Metal out of Finland, now is wildly successful. She cannot keep her inventory in stock because the demand is so high. And the third person on this, this little case study portfolio for you guys is a friend of mine. Her name is Molly Bloom, and she is an author. She wrote a book called Molly's Game, which was eventually turned into a movie by Aaron Sorkin called eponymously Molly's Game. And her story is fascinating because she was an Olympic class bump skier. She skied the moguls here in Colorado, broke her back. And she came from a family of very, very high achieving athletes, and she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do with her life. So she moved to LA and became she chaired a poker game in LA, illegal, made millions and millions of dollars with these poker tables in LA, eventually moved to New York, did the same thing, illegal, got busted by the FBI. They confiscated and froze all of her assets, and she was left with nothing, but very lucky she didn't end up in the penitentiary. You know what I mean? So she didn't have any money. She didn't have anything to do. But what she tells me her greatest asset was her story. And so she started telling her story and working with people on how your story is your greatest asset, which is her quote that I use sometimes, working with startups, working with people who have addiction problems. Molly had an addiction problem. She's very open to it. And she wrote a book. And now she speaks. She's a coach. She has all kinds of startups that she works with all over the world, a true success story that started with pretty scary roots, if you ask me. So I think we can go ahead and change to the next slide. Okay, so here's when stories don't go so well. Actually, the storytelling here went really well. Unfortunately, the person telling it was a bullshit artist and a con, right? So this is Elizabeth Holmes, and she was the founder, and still is, of a company called Theranos out of Silicon Valley. And her company was this, very edgy, potentially life-altering company called Theranos. And they did blood testing. And the whole thing was the story was, these blood tests you can do at any CVS, any walk-in drugstore or pharmacy, and you will be able to see what is going on in your blood, whether you have cancer, whether you have diabetes, like all the unknowns. You can do it. You can walk into your pharmacy. Well, it turned out that it was all a con, and none of this technology worked. None of the product worked. And she had raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that was gone. It was a cash burn. So she is awaiting trial in Silicon Valley. And the reason I bring that up is, if you're going to tell a story, make sure it is authentic. Don't be a bullshit artist like Elizabeth Holmes. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are just a few tactics for you guys to use on how to make your story great, right? The first thing you have to do is write it down, right? Like write it down and you can learn it, right? There's a correlation between your ideas and thoughts and the actual act of writing it down, and write it down with a pen on a piece of paper. Don't write it on a digital, right? The act of writing it down with a pen or a pencil will really help you not only remember it, but iterate on it and vent on it and be innovative with what that story is. So you need to know it. And by writing it down, this is going to help you tell your story. Be true to yourself. That's the thing that we were talking about before, right? That's what you stand for. And the other thing I would say, especially for startups, and this is something I've noticed all over the world, maybe particularly in the United States, being true to yourself also means being true to your values, right? Everything that we're talking about here has a value component. I'm not talking about the valuation. I'm talking about your values, right? So if you look at companies, we'll take family business, for example, because I'm now the editor-in-chief of a magazine that focuses on family business. Multi-generational companies, family businesses like Nike, Burton Ski Boards, Zildjian Cymbals, companies that succeed multiple generations always have a value statement, right? And this is, this is something that comes with experience. But if you go to Silicon Valley and you're an investor, right? If I'm an angel looking at companies and startups in Silicon Valley, they have to have a value statement, right? What are your values? What do you stand for? They write it down. It's always in the pitch deck. And then as soon as the money comes in, those values get tossed into the dustbin of history, right? Like they no longer matter when the money comes in. And what I'm telling you, even after the money comes in, make sure that you know what your values are and you are living them. And a company that is my favorite case study of all time for values is Patagonia. Patagonia knows what they stand for, they know what their values are, and they live them. And if you don't agree with those values, they don't care, right? They keep staying true to what they are. And that's really what all of this is about. We've already talked about being clear. What the clarity part is, be able to articulate your story in 3 sentences or less, which is the assignment we're talking about. Know what you stand for. I think we beat that over the head here. And don't be afraid to pivot. My God, we're all pivoting right now. We're all pivoting. And on the other side of this pandemic, we are all better at what we started off doing because we're smarter. Our carbon footprint has shrunken globally because of the pandemic. And, we have a real opportunity here to be better versions of ourselves coming out of this pandemic. And last slide. This is the nitty gritty. We've already talked about most of this. It's writing it down, get it down to 3 sentences, be creative. All of these things that we've talked about, I put it in kind of a very sloppy looking outline, and I apologize for that. But work on these things, because when you look at the great pitches of the world, and a lot of them at CBC, you can go back and read their case studies. The great pitches that have won not only the global finals, but regional finals as well, they capture all of these things. Go back and look at Lepee, L-E-P-E-E, the last CBC winner when I was there. I think that was a couple of years ago. Great pitch. Go back and look at Jenny at Deaf Metal. Incredible pitch. Go back and look at how these people have been able to capture their stories with clarity, sincerity, authenticity, and voice. And it'll give you a map, and you can make it your own. So that next slide, I believe that is it. And I'm going to try to get back on. Yeah, your story, as Molly Bloom would say, your story is your greatest asset. And it will be for the rest of your life, no matter what you're doing in life, in business. To be a great human, your story is your greatest asset. So make it matter, be authentic, and be true. And that, my friends, is my very technologically cobbled together presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. I don't know if anyone has a question for Amy. Come on, guys, don't be shy.
Or you can be shy.
Or just for everybody saying thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
It's important to hear all these things. We know them in a way and have the intuition about them, but it is really cool to hear them again. And you just gave me goosebumps. Really, thank you so much. Storytelling is sometimes about not being shy of your story, because sometimes you feel that it's very simple and ordinary and it's like other stories, but it probably isn't, and it's unique in a way, or we can really find how is it unique, what would be worth saying. So thanks again.
Amy?
Thank you guys. And one last thing I just wanted to say, I wish you all so much success. I mean, fantastic. And if anybody is looking to yeah, it's getting pretty bad connectivity wise over here, Daniela. So I'm going to let you go because I don't want to be a distraction, but thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Amy.
see you next Tuesday. Is the next session. So don't forget about it. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you
Bye.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice evening.
Bye, everyone.